can you be 100% sustainable, Giles? I mean, that's quite a difficult one, because what does it mean to be 100% sustainable? Does it mean zero waste, zero carbon, no poverty?
As I think the other guests have said, it's one of those two generic words. It needs much more to it to actually mean anything. I think that a lot of brands are just too good at chucking these words out, hoping that it's going to bring them a favorable reaction from their marketplace. But you need to get into the guts of it and say, well, what part of sustainable are you going to go after and target?
So what's the answer? Is it possible to be 100%, or do we just need to do the best we can?
A brand has to find its unique opportunities, because the other problem is that there's so much shouting in the marketplace from brands about green and about sustainability that it's lost its meaning, and people aren't paying attention.
So on that point, Mike, who's faking it?
Ooh, not me. No, I think it goes back to the real and honest. I think you've got to be real. And I mean, we use a defining sort of model where we go, it's make a living, make a life. And there's a wonderful quote, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And I think that's a great way of just going, what do you make a living from? How do you do it? What do you get? And then that's the life you can make by what you give. And I think it's a great way of just looking at what you do really well, and then do what you do well with it. Do you know what I mean? That for me is the way you break through all the...
And don't just do the same as everybody else.
And Andrew, just before the break, we were discussing it should start from inside, from your staff, internal, at home.
Absolutely, and in fact at the Brands and Branding conference there was a speaker from Dell, and she was saying that one of the things they've done in their offices, everyone's so used to having a little bin next to your desk, they've removed all the bins, and you don't have a little bin, and and suddenly the shock and horror, you want to throw something in this bin and it's not there. And they're forcing everyone into a collective behavior of managing their waste, and then they have a set of recycling bins in a central area, and you have to go to the recycling bins and then put put paper and metal and rest and so on. So instead of just dumping everything there, and then it all goes into a central bin. So
quite simple things to do, but it makes a big impact,
and
right?
in the same way, so it makes you think how you can do something on a bigger scale. And I think that is so important, because you take every one of us, if you say you are a corporation, what is your behavior like? Are you good for society? What are you doing at home when you go home? How are your family behaving if they were a corporation?
Yeah. So Mindy, you at OgilvyEarth talk about the 7 sins of greenwashing. So take us through the 3 common ones that companies fall into.
Well, we've actually set up a guide that's about how to avoid greenwashing. So it's about the marketing principles that brands can apply to ensure that they don't fall into that trap. I think some of the more common ones are a lot of the things we've hit on, but number 1 would be honesty and transparency. So making sure that a brand is saying exactly what they're doing, not holding back. Certainly social media, as we talked about, allows that to be.
Who investigates whether they are, what they're doing is what they claim to be doing?
Sure. I mean, there's tons of watchdog groups that you have to be concerned about, and consumers can find this stuff out. It's very easy. I mean, corporations do need to publish that information, and if you read through the fine print, you can find what you need to know. So, it's in their best interest to make sure that in their communications they're being honest and transparent.
Let's look at Merensky, because that's quite interesting, Giles, in terms of, on the one hand, they're chopping down trees, but on the other hand, they're looking after their community in terms of education and job creation, etc., on a social level. So in what category would you put Merensky?
They're a classic example of a brand that needs to attend to all 3 pillars, the environmental, the societal, and the economic. They're the pioneers of sustainable afforestation, which is, plant more than you're taking down, and make sure that you're making a long-lasting positive contribution to the environment on that level.
Right.
But they're a forestry and sawmilling group, and a large one. So when they put up a sawmill in a community, they absorb entire communities. They take over towns from an economic and a social perspective, which means they have a moral duty to be involved in that community on a number of levels. So be it education, be it AIDS awareness, and of course they have a micro and a macroeconomic
Right.
impact, and they must be conscious of that, and they must think about how they are going to morally approach
Yeah.
those issues,
Yeah.
because one only has to look at the latest global economic meltdown, which was driven by immoral financial practices of large corporations, which cascaded all the way through the societies and the people, not only of that are directly involved, but indirectly involved with those brands.
Because I think a lot
So-
of people think if you think sustainability, we go green immediately, and it's trees and water and whatever the case may be, and then but we forget about society. And what I liked, what stood out for me was Prime Media and the Lead SA campaign, Andrew. Looking at what society can do to protect ourselves and the role of media, which I think is also important.
Well, I think it goes back to your question earlier as well, saying who monitors, and that is where the society is very different now to where it was 10 years ago.
Right.
And again, through social media as well as formal media, there's so Prime Media have created a watchdog system where everyone's a watchdog, and they've provided a telephone number where you can give anonymous calls, and they're looking at all the behavior of local government and social services constantly, and saying, if you see something, report it and we will follow up. So I think that whole Lead SA initiative is about, we can be great, let's do something better, where can we improve ourselves, we have so much opportunity, but they've taken on a role as a watchdog and an informer.
And it's working.
And that's where you have, so you're at such risk. If you're a corporation, you can't take that risk to say, oh, let's go and claim we're doing things, and in the background we will do something else, because now you're at the
Powerful stuff.
position, we even have in our labor law, we have a informer law that protects informants. So if you are in a company and you feel the company is doing something wrong, you can inform on your company with confidential information, and you are protected.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the power of collaboration as well. I mean, what we
100%.
find this model, because you all have, there's an idealism here, and I think that's what
But
unites
thanks
people.
to the World Cup, right?
Oh, there's one example.
I think it's all on the back of the World
Yeah.
Cup that's actually making it successful.
And I think that's the power, and you can create brands. So you see now with Schalit, the Schalit campaign,
Yeah.
and doing it in a different way, not all doom and gloom, and you can actually inspire people with one of the worst problems we're facing.
Absolutely.
Give people a voice, do something about it, and people are actually believing that now, and the power of the digital, the interactive media.
Well, that's
Is allowing us to do it.
The social media thing, and I mean, it's such a big thing. Yes, there are watchdogs, but brands have developed a very cynical public who will interrogate promises and ideas that are being communicated to them. And when the social media environment is available to them, not only will they find you out if you're talking fibs, but they'll make sure that the word spreads very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's an incredibly dangerous thing for a brand to do, to start projecting an idea that isn't completely true and defensible.